I will upload it today and give you both the links. Okay. I will do it today. I'll send you guys the links for the sessions. But the first session, I think my first session, I have taken it. I have given you guys the URL. I hope everybody got it. The second session is missing, I assume. Correct? Okay, fine. I'll do that. So apart from that, all of you have got the environmental details. You guys are able to log in. Any issues with that? Did you guys try logging in? Yeah. See, there are only two ways we can uh, provide you the systems. One is remote desktop. I assume it will not be allowed inside the Wipro environment. So the other way is the web login. You guys have to either get Chrome browser or you guys have to upgrade your IE browser to IE 11 at least. So only then we'll be able to provide you the environment. Did you guys try upgrading your browser to IE 11? Or you guys, can you guys get the Chrome browser? Will it be possible? Okay. So let's see that. Anyways, apart from that, you guys can always, from home, you can always connect to it from your personal laptops and you can always practice it. Nobody is stopping you. But from the office premise as such, uh, yeah, you guys have to at least get Chrome browser or IE11. Only then I think the latest HTML5 will work. As the HTML5 might not work in IE9 as such. The remote desktop feature is a part of HTML5, so that's where we have all these problems. Okay, fine. So did you guys try the basics of HTML which we discussed last week, last session? Any doubts till then? Okay, fine. So today I'm gonna just explain you about one more way of selecting an element. That's a short one. It's called XPath. You guys used XPath earlier? Anytime? Okay, so we'll see uh, XPath and we'll start with Selenium programming today. Okay, fine. So you guys are able to see my screen? Okay, fine. So there are multiple ways. There are basically two ways of selecting an element in HTML. So one is the CSS selector. Okay. Now inside Selenium coding, there are multiple ways, but when you see an overall a web application, we can reach a particular element in a page by two ways. One is obviously the CSS selectors, which include ID, class, type, hierarchy, etc. The one we have seen in the last session. The other way is the XPath. Now the XPath is nothing but a relative, uh, again, a pattern over a web page. So there are multiple ways of checking that. So you can just try inspect element, and I don't know if this browser provides XPath. Or let me show you guys one more tool. So there is this one more tool called as Firebug. Okay, so this is a pretty handy tool. This is nothing but a developer's console, inspector console. Now this comes with Firefox. Now once you guys are able to log into the environment, we have Firefox over there. So you will be able to install this. Again, it has nothing to do with Selenium, but it is just a helping tool which will help you to actually see the HTML code and etc. Okay, you don't really need this to code in Selenium as such. So this is just a web developers tool. So here it will actually show what is the HTML behind this web page, what are the JavaScripts, what is the CSS, etc. Okay. Now the same tool also shows us highlights and shows us what can be the CSS selector and the XPath. Okay, so you just select the XPath and you choose this. So it will automatically show what could be the XPath for that particular element. Okay, so this is how an XPath would ideally look like. Okay, so there are two ways of providing XPath. One is relative, other one is absolute. Okay, so the absolute way is again. So always the XPath starts with double slash, like root, and then the continuous. And the absolute would be starting from HTML. Okay, so you write HTML slash body slash etc. So you actually absolutely say the program to traverse which particular pattern, or you can take an individual element, the intermediate element, slash div slash class name, etc. Okay, so that way, so wherever it finds the pattern, it will go and identify that particular element. In this example, you can see that it has actually taken the relative path where it has chosen the attribute ID, the value. So this is the way you actually represent the attribute value. Okay, and star represents anything. So it doesn't really matter what lies before that or on top of that. So ideally, wherever you find an attribute with the name personal loan, slash means its children, anchor tag. So that is how the XPath works. Okay, so the items inside this is same as CSS selector, but the way you represent it is different from the CSS selector. Okay, the way you represent an attribute, the way you represent a class, everything stays the same. The only difference is the way you write it. So it starts with a double slash followed by the selectors. Now if you don't have anything, if it's not an absolute, you just put a star and then followed by your pattern. So it might be anything. It can be a normal uh, you know ID, or it can be pattern of, I mean, ID inside another tag, etc. It doesn't really matter. Okay, clear? Or you want me to repeat? Okay, so we'll do this once more. Okay, so there are in this whole of idea of this is how to identify an element in the web page. Okay, so in the starting two sessions we have seen the basics of HTML. So what does an HTML contains? Okay, what are the CSS? What is an ID? What is a class? And we have also seen how you can identify a particular element in HTML using CSS selectors. So that is what was happened in first and the end of first session and the second session. Correct? So that is nothing but a CSS selector. So the way you represent the pattern, you call it a CSS selector. Okay. Now, apart from CSS selector, the other way of selecting or identifying an element is using the XPath. Okay, an XPath is nothing but, so you have this web page, correct? And this is nothing but a combination of HTML tags. So XPath is the one which actually defines how you can actually reach till this particular point in a web page. Okay, so now, as I said, it actually exactly tells you how to reach this particular point, and it ideally identify this particular element or elements which has a similar pattern. Okay, mostly it ideally identifies only one single element. So when you specify an XPath, it actually comes and identifies exactly the element. Fine. Now there are two ways of identifying. One is you actually start with HTML, body, div, and you go on according to the hierarchy which you have. Or that is the absolute path. Or the second way of representing and the XPath is the relative path, where you just specify the star, which means it can be anything, HTML, div. This order could be anything, but you surely know that there exists an element with ID loan amount. So let's say I choose this. Okay, so there exists an element with ID personal loan. So you specifically say that it may start with anything. Okay, HTML body, div inside a div, inside a div, inside a div, it doesn't really matter. You just put a star till the pattern finds an ID with loan, personal hyphen loan, this one. Okay, what lies above that is immaterial. So till you find the personal loan, select that element and the anchor tag inside that. That is what this represents. So this is an XPath. So the moment you give CSS select, I mean in the Selenium, I'll show you how to represent this. The moment you give this, it comes and identifies exactly the element. The other way, the same thing you can represent in a CSS selector using like this. So the same thing you can represent like this. So it's just different ways of approaching a single problem. So it's up to the programmer's convenient if he wants to follow the XPath, if he wants to follow the CSS selector. Again, it's purely up to the developer or the Selenium coder. But there are these are the two different ways in which you can identify an element. One is the CSS selector, second one is the XPath. And how does an XPath look? This is how an XPath look. Okay, it starts with double slash and then followed by the pattern. So there is nothing like a space over here. It's always slash slash slash. You have to specifically say this is my element slash this is my next element slash this is my another element. Clear? Just the way we said over here, there is an ID slash anchor tag. If there is one more span or label inside that, slash label. That's how it goes. Okay. So any questions so far on any other topics we discussed? Because now we are going to go to Selenium. We're going to start with Selenium programming Java. So if you guys are clear with it, so it will be easy for us to look through the Selenium coding. No doubts? Right. So the absolute path is ideally without this star. So if you can, so I have selected this particular element. Okay. Now when I want to reach this particular span, okay, so I say this is my reference point. Okay, so what is it? EMI calculator form. Okay, this is my reference point. Okay, now from this reference point, you select a div. Okay, so this is my reference point. From this, you select 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, fourth div slash div, another div, inside another div, and a span. Okay, so this is a relative path because I am generalizing this whole other hierarchy and replacing with a star. That is relative. Now, whereas absolute will be, it will start with HTML. So double slash HTML slash body slash div slash main slash article again slash div of 2, and it goes on. So when if you are able to specify the every single element, which we generally don't have to do, okay, if you are able to specify every single element and hierarchy for reaching this particular element, that becomes an absolute path. That's all. Okay, any other question? Any other question, guys? uh, Advantages as in it depends upon the scenario. Okay, now there could be scenarios in which you might not be able to find a relative path in a web page again. So when you code, you will come across different web applications where different developers would develop in different ways. So in case if you are not able to find a relative path at any point, you go for absolute path. Now absolute path always works. Okay, so absolute path is definitely finds that particular element since you are given every particular details of that element's path. There is no way the uh, program would miss that element. Now, when you give a relative path, for example, if you use a class as a relative, the same class and the pattern may exist at some other place in a web page. So it might be chances where you might not get a single result of out of that particular selection. So those are certain advantages, but in the latest way of coding, it is very rare that you will face those issues. Okay, you only thing you need to remember is, so when you give a CSS selector or something, you just have to make sure that there is no that when you provide a pattern or a CSS selector, anything, you just have to make sure that there is no other element in that web page which matches that pattern. Else, the resultant what you get will be more than one. Unless you are not expecting more than one, you should make sure that the thing you provide is identifies only one. Uh, it's It's not like a competition we have, which we say is more reliable. Uh, Both are the same, it's just a different ways again. So you don't see which is more. Both of you them takes almost the same time. But again, XPath is like you pinpoint and say this is my element. Now, if you want to generalize and identify it, CSS is the one. Okay, that's the only difference. There is nothing like reliability. Both are reliable. Now, only thing is that we have tools which will easily give you the XPath as such. So that is why uh, it becomes easy to use an XPath. You just right click. Most of the browsers provide you the XPath. You directly give you the XPath of the element. The CSS selector, you might have to do a little bit of more of working, but we are free to use any of them. Okay. Any more questions? Okay, fine. So let's start with Selenium coding. So I hope you guys are fairly familiar with Eclipse IDE. You guys have gone through the Java training, so you guys should have created worked with Eclipse, correct? Oh, so you guys know how to create a normal Java project. Okay. Now, for writing a Selenium code, okay, let me take a simple. Right, this is the basic. For writing a Selenium code, the first step is the best place to actually work is Eclipse, obviously. Okay, since it is Java, this is the best IDE tool which you can use for development as such. Okay. Now, for making an also to start with, you just create a Java project. Okay, and you can make this particular Java project a Selenium project. It is very simple. All you need is these jars, Selenium jars. Okay, the moment you include these Selenium jars into your project, it becomes a Selenium project. Okay, I will mail you guys these jars so that you guys don't really have to. Once the session is done, I will mail you guys this jar files so you can straight away take them and use it for your purpose, or at least I will send you guys the link and from which you guys can download this particular jars. It's a very simple step. Create a Java project. I hope you guys know how to create a Java project. Anybody having doubts in how to create a Java project? Anybody who wants me to show how to do that? Hey, yes, tell me. What's your question? So I'm asking, is there anybody who wants me to show how to create a Java project? For Selenium, include for adding the Selenium, making a Java project as Selenium, yes. We just need these three jar files to start with. Now there are other jar files as and when we use more features, we will have to add it. Okay, so let me just quickly show you guys. So you just right click, say new. Java project. Okay, so you give a project name to this name for this project. Let's say Java Selenium. Say next and say finish. Okay, now once you do it, create a Java project. You just one thing what you do is you right click and you just create a new folder and name it as lib, library files. Then as I said, I will send you guys the jar files or send you guys the links. So all you need to do is copy from here and paste it in this particular folder, library folder. So you have it in this library folder. Okay, then you select this and add it to the build path. Done. So this is the general way of adding any jar into your library project. Okay, all I have done is I have 3 jar files. I take them, I put them. The library of files I am done. All I have to do is I have to go and code. Clear? Step 1, create the project. Step 2, create the library folder. Step 3, add the jar files into the library. Step 4, select them, right click, add to build path. 4 steps. Step 0 is having the Eclipse. I just didn't want to repeat that. Okay. Now build path is there are 2 things. One is putting your jar files in a project location. Yeah, putting jar files into project location. So in Java, what actually happens is having a jar file in a project is different from including a jar file in a project. There are 2 things. So if you guys know the basics of Java, so a Java is a compiler kind of program where it's not, there are 2 things. One is interpreter and compiler. So compiler, what it does, whatever code you have written, it is a human readable code. So before the program executes by the computer, it compiles and turns them into a binary, which is a machine readable format. Correct? Now when it compiles, it needs to know what are all the files which you need to compile. Now that is where you have a list of build items. Okay, now if you want your jar files to be compiled, when you obviously, because if you are using the features or the functions inside this particular program, you will have to compile this before you can execute. So this is where you select them and you add it to the build path, so that when the compiler compiles, it compiles the complete your code, the jar files, everything. That's all. So you just add it to the build path so that it is included in your project. And the compiler compiles, it compiles your code with the jar files and makes the final dot whatever executable format. Clear? No, this is the complete package. So you have all the browser specific items which you need inside this particular jar file. Now, yes, so when you are dealing with different browsers apart from Firefox, you will have to include one something called as executable .exe files before you can work on it. We will see that. So this is 2.4.8. So you can see it in a jar. So jar, this particular number represents the format. So ideally anything above 2.4 should be fine. So if you see the jar, that is what. Yeah, so we have discussed, so what is a WebDriver? So a WebDriver is the one which helps you to interact a browser and your Selenium program. So each browser has its own specific driver. So a Selenium JAS which we see has inbuilt Firefox. Now if you want to work with IE, if you want to work with Chrome or any other thing, so there is one file for each one of them. I will show you guys. All you have to do is download it, keep it in some folder and provide a path. So that will actually help takes care of, executing the commands in that particular browser. So if you guys remember the architecture I explained you guys, so we have a browser, we have the automation, we have the Selenium jars. This is nothing but a jars, and you have browser specific WebDrivers. So let me rename it to Selenium jars and browser specific. So the Selenium speaks to these common jars. So these jars are, written in such a way it is commonly used for, it's in sync with the Selenium jars. And this particular jar contains a translation commands for executing them inside the browser, specific browser. Sorry about that. Yeah, so there is one more question. Doesn't need object implementation to associate like QTP. I'm sorry, Pranish, I didn't really get your question. Could you please rephrase it? So are you guys clear with the WebDriver? So I will show you guys what is a WebDriver. So in this session, we'll see what are the Selenium jars, what is a WebDriver, what do you do to interact with your separate browsers. I will show you. So you'll see it in some time. But I just want you guys to remember this particular diagram. So you have Java code which you write, and you have Selenium jars, you have WebDriver, and then you have the browser. So this is how the hierarchy goes. Always keep this in your mind. That's all. Okay. When you say object repository as in the library, this particular folder, is this what you mean? Yeah, it's good that you just have a folder which contains all the additional libraries which you use for that project. So you can always maintain a single folder for all your projects. So you can still click on the project, go to build path. You can say add external jars. Okay, you click on it, you can browse the library files if can be in one place or multiple places, and you can say add it to the build path. It will add. Okay, but generally when you make a Java project, to start with, you always have its own library folder so that you can put all the specific library files which you use for that project into that, and it doesn't get mixed up with other projects. That's all. It's not really compulsory. But when you build it, you just have to make sure that it is added to the build path, wherever the path of this particular library jar file. That's all. That's the most important thing. Did I answer your question? Right. Any other question regarding the project setup and adding the library files? No questions? Okay, fine. So here we have a sample program. Okay. So you don't really have to sit and write all these import statements. As in when you start typing the program, it will automatically prompt and the libraries will get added. Only thing you need to make sure is you have these three particular files inside your program. Okay, project. So let's start. Uh, Let me start over here. I will make a new class. Mm, so I'm just specifying the package name. Okay, so let me create another uh, public include void. So all I'm doing is I'm just creating a class and I say finish. So it comes in a default package, but you can always include a package as such. So you just type package and give the package name. So I will give it as com dot uh, Selenium, and I will ask program to do. So if you see here, the package is already created. The package is again is nothing but just a hierarchy of folders, so that you can always structure your project and keep the programs, the code you write in a order. For example, when you generally create a Selenium project in an actual scenario, what you would do is you would maintain one thing called as Selenium programs, which will have all the code to interact with the web application, and the other one will be the test. So there will be two packages. One is the code package, which will be your custom naming. Other one will be custom naming dot test. So that all your test cases go to one particular folder, and all your other code relating to the browser interaction goes to other folder. So if you see my folder location over here, so this is the project which we made, and this is the SRC folder. Inside this, you can see it's just a folders which are created, and at the end you will have my java.java file. Clear? How to create a, so this is one way of creating a package. Now apart from that, you can always right click and say create a explicit package. So you can go ahead and just create a package, or a simple way is shortcut is you just type it out and then you say ask the Eclipse to create that package. It will automatically create the whole path. That's a shortcut. Okay, clear? What is a package? Why do we create a package? Any questions? Okay, fine. So this is how typically a Java program looks like. Again, I know you guys should know by it right now. I am assuming that you guys know it by now. And once you do it, you start with creating a web driver. Okay, so there are different classes. So there is something called as a WebDriver class. So there is something called as web element and etc. We will see one by one. Okay. So first step, again, the Selenium comes with the default WebDriver, Firefox. So first we will see that and all the features regarding a WebDriver. And I will show you guys how you can, what is the change you guys need to do for making the same code work for a different browser. Okay. So WebDriver. So I just type it and say import WebDriver. Fine. So the easy way of actually identifying this particular piece classes is you type half and you say control space, it will show you the suggestions. This is where the Eclipse, all these features of Eclipse comes in handy when you program. And so this way you have initiated the browser. Okay. So once you initiate a browser, the next step is to launch a particular URL. So for launching a URL, all you have to do is you need to know what is your web page URL. Okay. So in this case, what I'll do is we are going this particular page as a base URL page. So I'm going to take this and then launch and show you guys how it will actually launch it in a driver. Okay. So we have this particular object. So we say driver dot navigate dot to. Okay. So you provide the URL here. Oops. Okay. So I'm just asking the program to halt for 1 second. So this is 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 second. And then I say driver dot close. So what I have done, I have initiated the web driver and I open the link. I wait for 1 second and I close. That's all. I have not done anything else. You guys understood what this is? What have I done? Okay. So let's run this small piece of code and let's see what actually happens. Okay. So right click, run as Java application. So it launches a web browser. It opens the URL. It waits for 1 second and then it closes. Okay, so it is pretty important that we write this particular line to make sure that the browser closes. Else, if you don't do this, the browser stays forever. So once you, since it's automation code, you might be running it multiple times. And if you don't write that particular, if you don't make sure that a particular line does not execute, you have multiple browsers and sessions open, which might also increase the burden over your web application. Okay. Yeah. So somebody says they have a question. So if you have a question, just ask it. You don't have to explicitly mention that you have a question. Tell me. You have a question? Uh, you are you posting your question? Close the browser before the page finish loading. Uh, Again, so there is nothing like a page. Yeah, correct. So this is a good question. Okay. So there is something called as wait. Okay. Just a minute, guys. I'm getting a call. Just give me a second. I'll come. Hey, sorry about that. Right. So it is true that it might happen that you try to open a page, you try to search for it, and before that happens, your browser might get closed or your program might execute the further steps. Okay, so it is for that reason we have something called as a wait. Okay, so there are three kinds of waits, three ways in which you can make the program wait. So, and it is important that when you are dealing with a browser, you should make sure that the page is loaded and you halt your program by using any of these three ways. We will be seeing those three ways. We have already seen this one way, thread.sleep. Uh, we will see the other ways. There is something called implicit wait and there is something called explicit wait. Okay, we will see them and we'll use them. We'll see how exactly it actually behaves. And yes, the program, the test case might not execute properly if you don't put the wait. And there is a chance that your test case fails or the program doesn't yield the output which you require if you don't put the wait. Okay, it does happen. So the browser might close before it finish loading. The scenario happens. If I don't put it, it it sometimes depends upon the speed of your system. You might not be able to see, or all the elements in the browser might not load before the driver.close executes. And as a programmer, you have to handle all that. Yes. What's the difference between a wait and a sleep? Okay. So let's see what is a wait and a sleep. Okay. Let me just close this out. Right. Now, a thread.sleep is a Java level. Uh, it's at the Java level. So when you write this program, okay, so this thread.sleep belongs to Java. So which means the execution of the program has been stopped at JVM level. Okay, so irrespective of what you write after that, it will wait for this particular time. It's a fixed time. It waits and then it continues. Okay, whereas the wait which we spoke is again, so Selenium as such provides different ways of the implicit and explicit way type of waiting. Okay, so like you can see here, so the implicit waiting is something you bind to a driver. Okay, so here you just say that driver, before it loads the page, you wait for 10 seconds. So this is how you specify an implicit wait. Okay, and this is at a driver level functionality. Okay, where thread.sleep is inbuilt Java level functionality, the wait which we speak implicit and explicit is at a Selenium level difference, and it is depends upon the browser. So if the browser has loaded or not, if the element is visible or not. So depending upon that, it can be either complete 10 seconds wait, or it could be a partial wait. So it doesn't mean that it has to wait for all 10 seconds. So when you say implicit wait, it again it waits till the browser actually loads. Okay, and the maximum amount of time where it actually waits is 10 seconds. Do we have a function to close the browser immediately after the page is finished loading all its contents? Yes, so the driver.close does nothing but closing the web page, everything, web page, the browser, everything. The driver does close what we wrote here is what it does. And this particular line make sure that it waits for 10 seconds. That's the maximum amount of time it gives for the page to load, and the moment it loads it ends. So I can just remove this thread.sleep. Okay, and if I execute this, all it does is it makes sure the browser loads, and then it, in this particular line, closes everything, the browser, the web page, everything. Is that your question? Right. Okay, the page loads and then it closes. Yeah, it's just your number, you can do anything, but it doesn't really matter. So I've given 100 seconds, or let me go 20 seconds. Half. So this is the seconds, the unit, and this is the time, and you can go as much as you want. It's up to you. Okay, this particular line used to wait for 10 seconds, now it will wait for 30 seconds. Okay, whereas thread.sleep, it's in always milliseconds, and this is at Java level. Now irrespective of what may happen, it will wait for 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 second, and then executes the rest. That is the difference between a thread.sleep, which is a Java level function, versus the implicit wait, which is at a driver level functionality. And it can vary depending upon the speed of the browser. Okay, now the explicit wait. So the other kind of wait, this is implicit wait. This is where mostly for the browser level, you estimate the amount of time the browser might take to load, and then you just say wait. Okay, and the explicit wait is where you know a particular element. Okay, you're looking for a specific element. For example, this loan amount. Okay, For example, you say that my browser is loaded if I am able to click on this particular element, or if I am able to access this element, then I say that my browser is completely loaded. Okay, in that case, what you do is nothing but an explicit wait, where where do we have explicit wait? Right. So on explicit wait, what you do is you load the browser. There is a question here. Yeah, I think. Okay, fine. So an explicit wait would look like something like this. Okay, so you are, okay, there is one more question. Yeah. So here what you do is you specify the time. Okay, and after that you say you specify the element of reference. Okay, so what it actually does is the maximum amount of time it waits is 30 seconds, but the moment it finds that this particular uh, item is clickable, okay, it actually stops the waits and then it closes it. Okay, let's see this, and then we'll have one more round of discussion about this particular explicit wait. It almost looks the same, but what it actually does is it makes sure this particular ID, an element with this ID loan amount. Again, it goes back to our basics of HTML. When I say ID is nothing but this particular ID, attribute ID, having a value loan amount. Okay, so it explicitly makes sure this particular thing is clickable, which means it is ready to click in a DOM element, I mean in a web application, and till that particular time it waits, and else it will wait for 30 seconds or 10 seconds, and then it continues for the next set of code of execution. Okay, lost. Should we have it once more? Should I explain this once more, or you guys understood? Everybody clear? We got one person who says he is clear. Others? Okay, fine. Yeah, yeah, tell me. Was it out? The name of the XPath. We didn't use any XPath here. That's an ID. It's not an XPath. It's just a name of a ID. It's neither an XPath. It's neither a CSS element. Okay. And what do you mean by save it in a file? Uh, no, is your question regarding the loan amount or is it regarding the ID? This one, buy.id. Yeah, so again, these are all different, classes as such. So if you see web element is a class, okay, buy is a class, web driver wait is a class, and all these classes are inside this jar files which we specify. This is the Selenium package, okay. Now, once you include that, you can forget. So as and when you want to use it, you will just say import that particular class. And this by is a class which helps you to it provides various all sorts of functions which you need for selecting a particular element. So ID is one. You have class name, you have CSS selector, you have name. So we'll see XPath. We'll see all this one after the other. Okay. Now in Java, this is the syntax. Okay. So this is the syntax which you have to remember. Okay. In Java, in the HTML, if you see in the JavaScript or CSS, the way you specify is different. You just specify a hash and then it automatically the framework takes care of selecting an element. But in Selenium Java, what you have to do is you have to say by. This is must. And if you are trying to select an element by ID, attribute ID, it is a dot ID. Okay, and again, if you remember, I have told you that there are inbuilt attributes, ID, class, name. All these are inbuilt attributes of a web application, HTML. Okay, so the same way, even the Selenium code which is developed, so we have specific functions for handling each one of them. We have ID, we have class name, we have name. Okay, apart from that, you can always specify a CSS selector, you can always specify an XPath and a particular identify a particular element. That ID will not change for a particular element. uh, it's purely on how it is developed. Okay, now it might happen that right, as I said, it's purely over a developer. Okay, now a developer might make a mistake stating that he may go ahead and give okay, you are answering who? Yeah, so you said that it will not change, but that is not the scenario. That is what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is, ideal scenario, a programmer should make sure that ID is unique. That is the valid situation. But it might also be the scenario where the programmer might have made a mistake and he might have given you more than one element the same ID. In that case, it might happen that it selects the first one and give you only the one output. Okay, and as a tester, you should make sure that you identify that particular scenario and you reply it back to the developer. How do you find it? Now, for example, it goes by hierarchy. Okay, a loan amount is present at this particular level. Right. So that is what I'm saying. So in that scenario, what do you do is, and how do you identify the scenario? Okay, so you generally give an ID and you get an element. Okay. Now, how do you find that it is not the element which is actually, you are getting it? So when you use loan amount, and if you are not getting the value which is present in this particular element, which essentially means that there exists an element with the same ID. That before fetching the input from the element, one validating the correct. Yes. So you just make sure, and then you just give it back to the developer saying that there are multiple IDs, and you please make sure that you give different IDs for different things. Now, if they want to use the same name for multiple elements, they can always go for a class. A class is something which is used for the exact same purpose. You can use the same key at multiple places, and when you actually use by class name, it returns you an array of elements. An ID generally returns only one, whereas a class returns multiple elements. Okay. In that case, there are two ways. One, for the time being, you can always go a different path. Generally, an XPath also gives you the same, nothing but an ID. You can always say the class. Again, you can use a relative path CSS selector, class, and then the ID. That will again uniquely identify that particular element. Or you can rectify the code and start executing. It's up to you. Okay. For the time being, you can always find a unique path and represent the element. Okay, it doesn't have to be only by ID. It can be a CSS selector which specifies a path and reaches that element. Did I answer your questions? And you can always unmute yourself and just uh, speak. You don't really have to type the whole thing out. Did I answer your question, or is it still left unanswered? Others? Any more questions? Okay, fine. So let's go ahead and see our next step. Okay. So I will just remove this. I'll comment this out. I will say implicit wait. So the next step, what we'll do is we will see, we'll try identify different elements in a web page, and we'll try accessing each of this web page in this, each of the elements in this web page. Okay, fine. So what we'll do right now is I'll open this page. We have already written the code for that, and I will try entering some value in this page, so into some value into this text boxes, and then close. In this manner, we will see different ways of identifying the same element. Okay. Again, everything starts with this driver. So this is our base handler. Okay. So this particular handler provides everything you actually need to access this particular browser or access any element in this particular web application. Okay. Now I will say driver dot let's see which one shall we go for. We will say find element. We'll say element. Okay. By I will say ID. We will choose this particular inbox. Okay. And I will say, what do you do? So you have selected the item. What would you like to perform? Okay. Once you actually select that element, these are the set of items which you can actually do. So what I will do is I will sorry. So once you find it here, I can clear the text. I can perform a click. I can, we will try entering some text into the text box. Okay, so where is that? Some keys. Okay, now the send keys is the function. Uh, See, when you say an ID, it doesn't really matter it's a checkbox or anything. Okay, when you say ID, you have an ID. You have an element which contains the ID. You can always identify that element. Okay. Or the current way of putting it is what would be the selector if it's a checkbox. Now, for that, you will have to see a web page. Okay, it's not an ID. An ID is a defined attribute. The right way of putting the question would be what would be the selector if it's in the case of a checkbox. Okay, all you have to do is just see the way how this particular selector or a checkbox is written. So you will have to just identify the checkbox path to be a selector. It can, again, the checkbox itself might have been given an ID. So you would be able to select an ID and say, just say click. So the moment you say click, the checkbox will get clicked, I mean checked. Okay, probably I'll take another example and I'll show you that. No, send keys cannot be used for deleting a value. You can use it for, there is another function called clear, which will remove the values inside the text box. Okay, now this particular web page has a checkbox. Okay, so what we'll do is first we'll run this particular program. Okay, and we will see how it actually enters the values, and then we will go and I'll show you how you can actually identify this checkbox. So your question is how you can click select a checkbox, right? So I'll show you after this example. Okay, fine. So ideally what will happen in this particular scenario, page loads, it identifies this particular text box, and it is, when I say send keys, it is nothing but it's going to enter the values into the text box. It is nothing but user typing the keys from a keypad. Okay, it opens, enters and closes. Okay, now if you want to wait, you can just, to make sure you guys are able to see it clearly, I just put a wait thread.sleep so that you guys can see the values being entered. Sorry. There, the values are entered. Okay, now let's change the URL. I will load this particular page URL. Now I think is I need to find this checkbox. Okay, so what I'll do, I will try find a pattern in which I can identify this input checkbox. So I will go for this particular class. So if I see this particular class name is not being used anywhere. Okay, so what I'll do, I will step number one, load this particular web page. Okay, okay. So I load this particular web page and I want to perform a click event. So what do? I say select by. Now since I don't have an ID, I'll go for CSS selector. So I say CSS selector. In my CSS selector, what do? I say inline. Inline is a class. So how do I represent this? Dot and the class name. Child of input. So we have a element with the class inline, and then we have a child inside that. There's a child element and it is of tag input. So I say input and then I say click. Oops. So it's opening the browser. It loaded, it checked, then it closed. Clear? You were able to see it? You want me to run it once more? Okay. So if you have observed in this scenario, yeah, if you I will run it once more. So if you observe in this scenario, as I said, when you write a code, when you want to select a particular element, it is completely up to the way your web page exists. In this case, I didn't have any you know ID or class for my element I want, correct? And I cannot just give input because there are a lot of inputs. There is an input box, two input boxes, there is a button. Basically there are three input boxes. So if I just give input, it will not go and click exactly the one I want. Okay, another thing is could have used the other way is checkbox. I could have always given checkbox type as checkbox. That will also work. The other way is the class name child as input. Okay, the most important thing is how did you reach to that level? How did you identify the element? So moment you identify element, 60% of your work is done. The main important thing is how would you identify the element? Okay, once you identify it, it is just a matter of what task you want to execute on top of that. How is the CSS displayed under HTML? I didn't exactly get that question. Could you please rephrase or be elaborate that? And meanwhile let's just run this once more. This time I'll give more weight. So how is the CSS displayed? Means inline CSS. Yeah, so Varsha, could you please elaborate over the question you asked? Right, so there are different ways of representing the CSS. Okay, there are actually three ways. Okay, where for the method number one is you write it in a CSS file like this. So you write all your CSS in this particular file. Okay, and you name the file with a .css extension, and you come to your browser. Okay, and like I said, a header section really in general includes all the scripts and the CSS which you want to include, and then you specify this particular, so you use link tag and you specify this link, and it inside when it loads the whole thing, but all you need to do is specify this link tag and it includes that particular CSS into your HTML. That is method number one. Method number two is there is something called as a style tag. Just the way we have a script tag and the link tag, so we have a style tag, which is nothing but inside your HTML you can let me show you the correct. So the second method is this. So you can specify the style tag and you can specify all the styles, and the scope of this particular style will be only for this page. Okay, that is method number two. Method number three is you can actually go to that particular HTML tag, specify style, and you can enter all the stylings you want inside this particular inline, semicolon separated. Okay, so these are the three ways of representing the styling for an HTML. One is a file which could be reused in multiple programs. Another one is this particular styling tag which could be used throughout the file. Other one is the inbuilt inline CSS which could be used only for that particular element. Okay. Any more questions? Questions, guys? Nothing? Clear so far? Okay, fine. So we have seen loading Selenium, setting up a Selenium project, opening a URL, and performing an action, single action. Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll do some we'll go further one more step, and we will see we will execute a series of actions. Okay, and what will that be is, I will, if you see current till now what you have done, we have a browser, I mean web application, you load it, and then you just click on items which already exist. And now what I will do is, I will perform a click option of a tab, and then I will enter values over these particular items over here. Okay, and I will just try and see if I can wait till the output is generated. No, so automatically it will not take a screenshot of all the steps. You can explicitly take a screenshot, which we will see in our further sessions. Okay, you can run it and you can see it's working, but we need to see if we can record this, or if we can, we need to explicitly write a code to record this. It's not automatic. Okay, and screenshot also, you should specifically mention in your code that at this particular step take a screenshot. Okay. Yes, so I will have to exactly check that once more. I will show you guys tomorrow how exactly to take a screenshot. Clear? Okay, right. So the current task is, you click on this personal tab, and then you make entries into this particular input boxes, and then you wait for the output to be generated. And just before going to that, what this web application actually does is, so this is a loan calculating web page, where you enter your amount of loan taken, and this thing specifies the rate of interest which the bank or the person who has taken from is charging you, and this specifies the amount of time frame you have before you can clear the complete loan. So once you enter this amount, uh, this will actually show you the monthly EMI you have to pay, what will be the end amount of interest alone you are paying, and what will be the total amount at the end of your loan clearance you would have already paid. Okay, so these are the outputs which we actually get out of this particular web page. And what I want to do is, I want to enter these values. I want to first select this particular tab, make sure everything is clickable, and then enter the values over this particular elements, and then read the output and display it in the program. This is our task. Are you clear? Yes or no? So we're gonna write a program which does all these actions. Okay, and you guys are going to tell me how exactly we're gonna perform these actions. If you guys are clear till now, you guys should be able to do this. So let's go step by step. Let me just connect my charger. Right. Okay. So are you guys clear regarding what we are trying to do here? What is the next step? Right? Yes, no? It is simple. Click on this tab, enter the values, read the output. 3 steps. Okay. Let's quickly go ahead and do that. So step number 1, driver is loaded. I have added the implicit wait till the web page loads. This is the web page loading step. Okay, I will not need this. So the next step is, once the page is loaded, the next step is to click over this particular item. So what I will do is, I need to click over this anchor tag. So I have this personal loan and an anchor tag. So I will go by Css Selector. So driver dot find element by Css Selector, okay, hash loan amount child anchor tag dot click. This will finish my step number 1, click on our element. Okay, next step number 2 is finding this text box. So it is loan amount. So again, driver dot. So since I have a specific ID, I will just go by select by ID loan amount dot send keys. Let's say 1 2 3 4. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Similar way, I want the other two text boxes. So I'll quickly go. This is loan interest. This has an ID. Let's say 55. So it will be 17.55. And tenure period would be, let's say, so this is the next step. Tenure period, loan tenure, let's say 0, which will actually make an entry as 0. Okay. Now once I have done this, I want to read the output which it generates. Okay. So I need to figure out this particular element. How will I do that? So I have an ID. So I use this ID and then say child p and then child span. So driver dot find element by Css Selector hash long term p span, and I want the text inside that particular element. So I say get text, which will actually give me the text inside that particular element, and I will print that. Everybody is familiar with SISO. What is system.out.println? What does it do? Everybody knows what is this? Yeah, we'll go through this once more. Okay, don't worry. So I'm writing the code. We'll execute. We'll make sure it runs successfully, and then we'll have 1 or 2 more rounds of the same thing. Okay, don't worry. Fine. Right. So this does nothing but printing the items in the console. So I'm gonna copy paste this, and then I will have to find the same thing here. So it follows the same thing. We have an ID, we have a P and a span. So it will be this, and here my total amount, ID and span. Okay. So if you run this, what will happen? The page will load. This will get clicked. Values will be entered. Values will be entered, and the values will be read. And then the moment it reads, it will print. Okay. So let's just execute once and see the output. Okay, we have some problem. Okay. I was not able to find this. I see. CMI amount. I give Control C paste. Pranish, you want to show something or did you click by mistake? You are requested to make yourself a presenter. Did you click by mistake or you actually want to show something? Okay, fine. No problem. Okay, so it has entered the values and it has read the output. Okay, there was a question in between. I don't know, it's again you are trying to answer or you are trying to, it's a question. Getting elements through element type. Was there a voice breakage at that time? Okay, anyways, so let's go ahead and let's go through this once more regarding what we have actually done. Okay, our target was to load this page, click over the element or this tab, enter some values into this text boxes and read the output of what is generated out of that particular elements. So we need to know what is the output generated for the given inputs. Okay, now for that what we have done, we have initiated the WebDriver, we have loaded the web page, then I actually found that I have to click over anchor tag. So for that the anchor tag didn't really have any class or ID. Okay, the anchor tag doesn't have any class or ID and there are multiple anchor tags. So if I have to specifically click on a specific anchor tag, I'll have to make sure I find that particular element as such, for which I have chosen a CSS traversal path, which is nothing but a personal loan ID child of anchor tag, which has a child anchor tag. So I used a CSS selector hash personal loan, which means ID personal loan, which has a children with a tag name anchor A, anchor tag. So once I found this, I performed a click event. Okay, then it was simple. The page loads, and we have three text input text boxes. Each one of them is having its own ID. So all I did is I selected each one of them using their ID, and then I did some send keys. That's like user entering the input values. So I just enter the send keys. Okay, and once the keys are entered, the web application immediately calculates the values, and it is displayed the output in this particular elements. So my next task is to read the output generated out of this web application, so which is present in these three locations. Okay, so in order to select that, what I have done, again, this is a span which doesn't really have any specific attributes to that. So I have to find a pattern. Now my pattern is this. So I have a EMI amount, which is ID, which is unique. So I start with this. I say that it has a child pay paragraph P, and that in turn has a child called span. So and get me the text which is present inside that particular tag. That is what I have written. I used a CSS selector, EMI amount, and says it has a children called P paragraph, which in turn has another children called span. Okay, once I found this particular element, all I have done is I have read the text. So this get text gives me the text which is present inside that element. Okay, and I have printed. So I use the sysO statement system.out.println to print it in the console. Okay, fine. The same way the others. So each one of them, if you see here, so is having a similar pattern. It has a div ID and it has a paragraph inside that span. Same div ID, paragraph, span. Okay. Same way I specified for all three of them, and immediately I have also given a print statement so that it prints in the console, and at the end driver.close to close the browser. Clear? Yeah, I will run the code once more. So page loads. Now the click event happens, values are entered, output is read and printed. Now if you want, I can give a wait option here so that you can see the values entered, and after that the printing inside the console will also happen. So we will run this once more. Right, so I will come to that. So there is a difference. Okay. So if you see here 12, 5 and 0, it's been entered into that. So the send keys function which we have, it does not clear the text. It just enters like user is selecting this element, okay, and entering a value. Okay, it does nothing else from that. That's the functionality of a send key. Okay, now if you want to clear it, you will have to explicitly say dot clear. Let's try it. and then give the complete value. So this will clear the text which is present inside a text box, and then enters the value. And so that will be like you select the element, you remove it, and then you enter. Okay. Now this web application has some more complications, which I will explain you tomorrow. Now for now you can actually see, I will run this code. Okay, so it clears and then enters the value. Fine, that's the difference. So there any more questions so far? You guys understood what we did here? Send keys does nothing, but it's same as you're just typing. You're not clearing the text. The clearing text and then entering values are two different things. Okay, so you need to handle them separately. Any questions, guys? We're gonna stop the session here today. We are out of time. We're gonna continue with a few more features and tools and other topics on Selenium tomorrow. Any questions so far? ILA. What is that? Uh, sure, but you guys have. I will send you the project as such. Don't worry. Okay. I cannot. I can give you this Java code, paste it here, but I don't know how helpful it will be unless you guys have the Eclipse and Selenium jars, everything set up. Fine. I'll send you guys it in a mail. Yes, I will do that also. I'll do it right away. I'll upload and I'll send you guys the links. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Everything. Fine. When I say project, it includes everything. I will see if it's a project or it's individual. So I will probably send you guys the link for jar files because jar files are heavy. I might not be able to share it over a mail. The project will exceed the limit of the size. So I might remove the jar files and send you the program alone. And I will send you guys the location in which the jars are present. You can download and include it in the build path. And you can paste this particular program so that you can straight away run it. Okay. Fine. Thanks, guys. We'll meet you tomorrow. Bye.